Welcome back, everyone, and thank you again. Hopefully, everyone are back refreshed, and we are going into the last part of the day, of the morning, where we will have 4 quick talks, lightning talks, from 4 perspectives about our industry. I will not come up to invite people between sessions so that we will be able to be efficient with time. So we will be inviting first Hen Pekar from Bluevine, Director of Fraud Analytics. Then we will go to Daniel Shkedi from Identic, Head of Product Marketing. I like that someone would in the back. We should do that. Afterwards, Professor Tamir Khazan, thank you, from Sunbit, co-founder and Head of Machine Learning Data, and also the Head of Machine Learning Data Lab at the Technion. And last but not least, Raz Kotler from PayPal, Director of Cybersecurity Oversight. Thank you, everyone. Hen.
Hi. The last time I did any public speaking was in Berlin with Gilit, 2 weeks before the first quarantine. So this was the last time. This is very odd. My name is Hen. I'm the Director of Fraud Analytics at Bluevine. Bluevine provides banking services for SMBs in the US. I've been working in this industry close to a decade, which I find very alarming. I've been a risk analytics team lead and an ops risk team lead. I've been a risk analyst. And once upon a time, I used to be a teacher. I used to teach psychometry for the Israeli folks, or SATs kind of for the Americans. And I'm very much a teacher at heart. And it comes into play in every role I do, and I'll talk about it a little bit. So I'm going to discuss today the customer identification in a post-COVID world. And when I prepared this deck, I kind of dove deeper into COVID and trends and research. And to be honest, it raised like a bunch of trauma. So I'm sorry to share my trauma with you, but I kind of remembered the most strange thing that happened to me during COVID. This isn't me. This is me. This person is not me. And a colleague sent me this picture somewhere very early during COVID and told me, basically just sent me the caption, "What is this?" Because this is odd. You can't see the picture very well, but I would wear that shirt. And I find this a little disturbing. And basically, I would really love to be able to connect this to fraud and identity, but I just wanted to share something odd because it's a good icebreaker. And also, I could tell you that I think that me and this strange lady, who I face talked for a while, but I don't remember her name, could possibly pass each other live selfie checks. So maybe this is my fraud connection. But going to the real thing, fraud. So I said before, I've been a manager for a while, and I've been working in risk for almost a decade, and I used to be a teacher. So often I get the task of introducing new people in the company to fraud. What is fraud? Doing like a fraud one-on-one kind of thing. I think I introduced like maybe 50 or 60 new fraud analysts to this domain. And so at this point, I usually have like a few slides prepared, introducing people to what fraud is, how do you handle fraud, the main challenges. And my most common slide that I do to newcomers is this, fraud one-on-one, the faces of fraud. And basically, I introduce the main kind of fraud scenarios that I'm familiar with because I've worked mostly for merchants, which are identity theft, social engineering, friendly fraud, and account takeover. This isn't new. All of you know this. When I present this slide to newcomers, I usually tell them that there's a big difference between the first scenario, which is identity theft, and the other 3. What's the main difference? Actually, I'll do this interactive because everyone's sleepy after lunch. What's the main difference between the first one and the other 3? What is the principle differentiating them?
The person doesn't know that it's happening.
Okay, exactly. The person doesn't know that it's happening. It's It's really based on the person themselves. The first scenario is a fraudster pretending to be someone. The other three scenarios, in kind of a mixed way, is the risk customer doing something they shouldn't do, or participating in something they shouldn't do, or having some kind of a mixed information like in account takeover. So this leads me to the second lesson in the School of Fraud that I usually do to fraud newcomers, which is customer identity. How do I recognize that the person is who they say they are? How do I recognize when a fraudster isn't who they say they are? Basically, I present how to build an identity and how to break an identity. And this is the third lesson, the building blocks of identity. Now, I've been doing this presentation for years. I've been pretty steady in my mind in how do you recognize that someone is who he is or he isn't? What's basically the chips in the armor of fraudster? How do I recognize identity theft and identity that just isn't good enough? So we have these four building blocks. The first one, what the customer says. We all know we have some things that the customer tells us that we have some ways to verify. Some of them we can't verify at all. We have any personal identifiers, the names, the addresses, the phone, the emails. We can do some action on some of them, but not on all of them. Maybe I'll never know if the name on the credit card used in this transaction is actually the name of the person behind this transaction. Then we have the second building block. We had what the customer has and what they're willing to provide for us. We have KYC and KYB. We have additional personal documents such as driving license or any banking information or business information. We have the MFA if you choose to do any of those. And we have personal identifiers such as IP, cookie, and device ID. Whatever we can get from the person behind the transaction or the account to give to us, or what we can understand ourselves. Then we have the third building block, the payment methods. Payment methods, as we know, any good risk analyst knows, provides a lot of information. If we're talking about cards, we have the AVS and we have the BIN, and we have whatever kind of attempts were made, what kind of answers we got from the issuer. If we're talking about other payment methods, we can get routing numbers and names, and then sometimes we even get bank connection. And this is another building block in who this person is, what is this identity, how strong it is. The last one is the customer profile, because we've all worked for different companies. We know what kind of customers we have, who is likely to be our customers, who isn't likely to be our customer, what the people that work for us buy, what they don't buy, how do they behave. And when combining the four of these, basically we have an identity. And in my experience, you know, there are more complicated fraud types, there are easier fraud types. Usually, it's pretty easy to know when someone didn't put out a full picture, when a fraudster was a bit lazy and didn't try to create a full identity. And these ones are the people we usually try to target when you're talking about identity theft. Nerd alert, things have changed. Basically, over the last year, I've noticed some fraud cases that look a little different from the usual fraud that I've been used to seeing for the last almost decade. So I'd like to talk about two specific fraud cases that I've seen. One, and they're both really, really classic. This is not a new type of fraud. It just changed in the quality of it. The first one is an identity theft case. In this case, we've seen fraudsters who created accounts based on identity indicators. In this account, they took money. You know the whole drill. I'm not going into information. But what was different about this scenario is the quality of the identity created by the fraudster. They provided KYC and KYB. They provide good additional verification, like a driver license. In some of the cases, they used age emails connected to the name of the customer creating the account, which we know is a bit difficult. Also, they successfully connected to a bank account through Plaid, which we know is very difficult. And after doing some research into it, we saw connection between these customers, these fraudsters, and other legit customers that were probably victims of account takeover. So this is a very classic type of fraud, but it was much better than things I was used to seeing. We had another fraud case that was also super classic, good old fraud, but different in the quality of it, a social engineering scheme, where basically Fraudsters sent SMS to our customers telling them that they're Bluevine risk analysts. Please verify this is your account through a text message. Send us the PIN that we sent you. And then the customers provide the PIN to the fraudster. And then the fraudsters created mobile wallet accounts. And we're very happy to spend our customers' debit cards. And this is, obviously, this is super new. You all know this, but this was a high quality fraud in the kind of data that the fraudsters had on the customers. And these are people that had nothing to do with each other. It didn't look like a data leak. It wasn't on our side. So we just saw a lot of very good data. This led me to do some internal research, talking to people in this industry, talking to our data providers, trying to understand what's going on. And basically what they all said is that since COVID, we see higher quality of identity theft. And why? In COVID, there was a rise in digital adoption rates. More people are buying online, people who would never buy online normally. My mom is buying online, and I find this disturbing because she doesn't know what she's doing. Everyone has a grandma who's buying online and probably shouldn't. No, people should be buying maybe online and making use of digital goods, but it's not always done responsibly. In the same way, we also know that we have businesses who are working online that in the past didn't used to. We have groceries, we have, there was an example, I used to work in Wix, of bathtubs. There are a lot of really interesting stuff, and basically businesses that didn't used to work online and now they do. We see a rise in e-commerce sales in general, and this means to us, everyone knows it in the room, there's more data online, there's more personal data online, there's more financial data online. It's not always secure, it's going all over the place. And there was a general rise in cyber attacks, specifically phishing and scam. It's the easiest when people who don't exactly know what they're doing are spending a lot of time online and making use of their credit cards. Something else that is more familiar to the US people here and less familiar to the Israeli one is PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. This was a plan by the US federal government to provide financial relief to businesses and people. Basically, they provided loans up until $10 million per business or per person in order to assist during COVID. It was in about a total amount of about $900 billion. And as someone who believes that small businesses should get help, I'm a big supporter of this. But as we know, fraudsters find their way. There was a lot of fraud here, about 80 billion in fraud losses. Basically, a lot of people scamming, getting a lot of loans unjustified. But also a main thing that happened here is related to the thing that I mentioned before about the data information online, is that a lot of people trying to apply for a loan send their information to private companies who then took this information and made use of it. And there is a lot of very private financial information that is currently going out in the world. And this kind of information didn't used to be out there. This is because of this program. So what's happening now? There's a lot more information online. We all know there used to be a lot, but there used to be card bundles, and they used to be pretty cheap, only a card, and some of them didn't work. Now we have a lot of information that connects people, identities, it's personal. Fraudsters sit on this information. They don't necessarily sit and make use of it so quickly, and we see this information used in fraud. The fraud identity that I see today is a lot more sophisticated and high quality than the identity theft I used to see. And for me, as a fraud fighter, this is painful. But for me, as a teacher, this ruins my slides. I no longer have a good school of fraud. This is very disturbing to me, and I don't know how to handle this. I'm a risk person. I raise issues, so I'm not going to give you solutions, but I can tell you what is my direction right now with dealing with these issues. I have an approach that basically puts a focus on two main items. One is very old school, which is customer education and MFA. Talk to your customers, letting them know what's happening in their account, on their card. We want to know and to let our customers know what's happening, what they should do, what they don't do, what we will never ask them to do. The other types are not new to any of us, but we all know they're data heavy. Sometimes they require a lot of resources, so maybe a lot of companies don't spend a lot of time on them, which is the geolocation identification, the behavioral analytics, and the customer connections. They're very data heavy projects, following logs of customer behavior and event and who logged in and who moved. That's really, we all want to say we do it because it sounds fancy, but it's problematic. And now we know that this is one of the main ways we have to differentiate between a good customer and a bad customer. And I've definitely run out of time. Thank you.
Thanks so much.